Hello, fellow Star Trek fans. Welcome back to a brand new episode of The War Room, brought to you as part of the Clonestar podcast. I am joined once again by my wonderful co-host, Sho. Sho, how are you doing, sir?
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Now, I can't believe I get to say this intro. This is a very special intro for me. This week, we are delighted to be joined by a man whose career has spanned law, entertainment, and directing. And he is now an author with his brand new book, The Most Human, Reconciling My Father, which is available in stores now. We are delighted to be joined by the very special Adam Nimoy. Adam, thank you so much for joining this week.
Thank you so much for having me on.
This for me is kind of a pinch yourself moment. I think you're the same on that one, Sho.
Oh, 100%. This is an absolute wonderful kind of interview to kind of do. Adam, in terms of your book, can I ask, why now? Why did you feel now is the time to kind of write this book?
Well, why now? I just felt that the book was, the whole idea of the book is trying to reconcile with a family member. And it's something that I've been thinking about for some time. I've been in the process of writing it for a couple of years. I think now is pretty timely. We have so much polarization in the world and on our political landscape here in the States. It just felt like the attempt to, reconnect with people in your family who you may not have had close relationships with, or problems in the relationships, dysfunction in relationships, seems to resonate with people when I share about my story. And it just felt like this would be a good time to kind of, to delve deeper into it. I touched on it a little bit in my documentary film, For the Love of Spock, about the issues that I had with my dad. And I just felt that if my dad and I could reconcile, we had been so far apart in our relationship, and if we could find a way to reconcile with one another, which we did, it might be of inspiration and of use to other people who are having similar experiences in their families.
And in terms of the book, Adam, you're incredibly honest, almost more honest than I was expecting you to be. Because again, it's not just a book about your relationship with your dad, it's a book about your relationship with other members of your family, and also, say, your friend, especially, say, Justin, in the book as well. How tough of a sell was it to yourself to say, I want to write this book and I want to be as open as I can? Was there any doubts in your head, or did you say, no, this is what I want to do?
Well, some of the resistance was that at first I didn't think I was going to write this book about my dad. I had talked about my dad, as I say in the film, and For the Love of Spock, and I really wanted to write more about my work in recovery. I've been sober for 20 years, and I wanted to write more about what was going on with me at the time, with my family, with my kids, and I'm learning to come to a resolution with my ex-wife, my first wife, Nancy. And also my mom, she figured prominently in the book, and I had some issues with her, and that was the focus initially. And as I was writing the book, it became more clear to me that my dad's voice kept showing up in my mind, and I kept thinking about my dad because my relationship with him was the most important relationship of my life, and it affected all my other relationships, really. And it just seemed like that I should just stop resisting that part of it, and delve a little bit more into what happened with him, because it really informs the way I raised my children. It informs a lot about my relationship with my mom, and I had some unfinished business with my dad, which was to really talk about in more detail what happened between us, because I think it's a pretty good father-son story, and not atypical. I think there's a lot of father-sons have some conflict and some issues, and have to find ways of resolving that, and reconnecting with one another. So it just seemed like, although it was not what I intended to write initially, it's what came out in the end, and proved to be a very good selling point for me, because the publishers were much more interested in something to do with Leonard Nimoy. Obviously, he's a fairly recognizable name, and would help us gain some interest in the project.
And one of the things I have to ask him, reading the book, like you characterize your relationship with your children to such a degree, almost that it's almost like I know them at this point. Like, I'm kind of used to the stories about Maddie, about Jonah as well. Was it a tough sell to them as well? Because obviously you delve very kind of deeply into your relationship with your two kids as well. Was it a tough sell for them to say, it's okay, we're on board with you kind of discussing your relationship with us?
No, I mean it wasn't. I mean, I read everything. I sat down with them and their mother, and we read through the parts of the book that they appear in. Jonah said, "No, this has to come out. Something had to come out." Maddie said, you forgot to put this in. This has to go in." And Nancy was very amusing. She wanted more conflict with her. Yeah. Because there's a scene in the book about an issue we have with the police department. Nancy and I were having, a little trouble communicating, let me say. And the police happened to be in the neighborhood, and they came by to see what the problem was. And I recounted some exchange between Nancy and one of the police officers, and she said, "No, there was much more to it. You need to include more, because I had some more words for that guy." I went, "Okay, what was it?" And I wrote it all down. So, I mean, I was okay with taking some things out, and they were okay generally with what I was writing. I think it's my journey with them. I've been very close with them, and they were very sympathetic, and they understood what I was going through, and they were very supportive. So I was lucky. I was really lucky that they were on board with the project.
And in terms of say, how honest you are in the book and things like that, like, were you surprised by how honest you came across in the book and kind of what you were willing to kind of put in terms of say, it can be hard for, say, look, I'll say it. It is hard for men to be as open about how they feel in situations like that. What really made the book a huge page turner for me was how honest you consistently were throughout. How you kept on talking about it was a journey you were on, and say, how much you were trying to grow as a human constantly, and always accepting the fact that you weren't perfect. Even though you were on a road to recovery, you could still make mistakes because you are human. But were you surprised by how honest you were coming across in the book?
Well, I mean, not really. I mean, that is the objective of good memoir, really, is to be honest and open and specific. And I did have editorial help. I hired a freelance editor to guide me as to when I should go deeper in some places, and when we should leave things off the page. I mean, although I'm pretty honest about my relationship with my dad and some of the things that happened with him, I don't tell everything. It's not a tell-all book. And that was, and it's a fine line between, what's being honest and putting some blood on the page, as we like to say, but at the same time holding back stuff that just it's not that helpful and not necessary. I think people will get the general idea of some of the issues I had with my dad by recounting a couple of specific episodes, but I don't need to recount everything. And the other thing that's very critical is that, yes, I can be honest about my relationship with my dad and some of the problems we have, but Leonard Nimoy is a guy who's beloved by fans all over the world, including your countries.
Yep.
I have, fans don't want to hear a lot of negative stories about Leonard Nimoy. So you have to be very careful about that. I mean, honesty is important, but at the same time, you have to be very sensitive to the fact that people love him and adore him. And the way, we got around that issue was being honest and open about the fact that I was always proud of my dad, even though I had trouble with him since I was a young boy. I just loved Spock, and I loved the work my dad was doing even before Spock, and afterwards, certainly. So, it's just you have to really walk a careful line in these things about, what does honesty look like, and how much of it do you tell, and what do you hold back and do you not need? I mean, you want to be honest and open, but to a certain point, to a certain objective, and that's where the editor came in. It's like, stay on point, stay on track. What is your objective? What is your theme? And then you can tell right away what you just don't need. And that was the same thing with the film. I mean, I kept trying to put stuff in the film, and the editor, also a woman, I wanted a woman's sensibility about this book and the documentary For the Love of Spock. The same thing. If you just keep to what the theme is, which is that the father-son difficulties, the tools of recovery, and the reconciliation, then it becomes clear about how much to tell and what you can leave off the page.
And what was the biggest thing that you learned about yourself, Adam, when you were writing the book? Because obviously, again, it's a big deal to kind of write something like this, as you said as well. It's not a salacious tell-all book. It's an honest book. When you were finished the book, or even as you were going through it, what did you learn about yourself?
Well, I learned a lot about just I was surprised about the impact that that Spock and Star Trek had on my life. This is the thing, when you go through all these episodes in your life, you start to realize the importance of these things. And it was just really nice reliving, some of the excitement of when Star Trek entered our lives. And it was kind of nice to like rediscover that. So much so that when there was a memory I had of my dad that I kind of like didn't think that, was that important. But it was interesting that I was on the set one day with him, and he was in full, regalia with his Spock makeup and his wardrobe, his Starfleet uniform, as it were, looking something like this. And I went up to him and I asked him to sign some autographs for me. I had two photos, one with him and Bill Shatner as Captain Kirk, and one of just Spock alone. And he signed them both, and then he said to me, "That's enough." He could be very gruff with me, and that was kind of my life growing up with him. It's like I never knew where he was coming from. He was very difficult. He was like a stranger in the house. So that was fine. And I was a very sensitive kid, so it was like, okay, I won't bother anymore. But then he went right back into being introspective, because he had to remember the lines for the day, the scenes that they were doing that day, and go very much back in the Spock character. And the thing that I discovered when I was writing the book was like the memory of being excited about the fact that I was there with Spock.
Mm-hmm.
I'm there, I'm present. I witnessed this. I was on the set a lot. And a lot of this time, and this was before Star Trek even aired. So knowing now, in retrospect, the impact that Spock has had on so many people for so many years all over the world, I can look back at that moment and think, oh my God, I was a 10-year-old kid and I was just hanging out with Spock. And it just becomes more important, more profound, more special to me, of this, something that was bigger than my dad, bigger than the both of us. And it was a very special, it just become a very special memory that I was around when all that was happening.
And you kind of briefly touched on it there, Adam, a few minutes ago with like what you're saying about the incident with the police and Nancy and things like that. Was there any other, say, memories or specific events that you had forgotten about when you're writing the book that kind of came back to you? Now, I can say kind of both positive and maybe necessarily negative memories and things like that.
Yeah, there was another one that happened, was that I was thinking about recently, was just how our lives had changed so dramatically when Star Trek went on the air and Spock became popular. And we were at home answering a lot of fan mail, because some magazine had accidentally published our home address as the mailing address for Mr. Spock and Leonard Nimoy. And we were getting a lot of mail at our house in West LA, and we were answering a lot of it, as a family. We were stuffing envelopes with these photographs of Spock. And I remember one time we came home, Julie and I, my sister and I, we came home from school, and we're on a school bus, and it was pouring rain in Los Angeles. And we got out and we got inside, and we were dripping wet, and there was a photographer there. And my dad was like, okay, we're going to take pictures now, answering fan mail. We were going to sit at the table and show them how we dealt with all that fan mail. And we were sopping wet. It was just ridiculous. But this was our reality. I felt really bad for my sister, because she had this long, beautiful brown hair, and it was just dripping, and we had to go get dried off and run and get ready for this, photography session. What's really interesting, which I had forgotten, was the impact that it had on our lives so dramatically. I mean, before Star Trek, we had so little. We were such a struggling actor family, was very typical of a lot of my dad's colleagues at the time. We just didn't have anything.
Yeah.
And our household was very sparse on furnishings, and we just didn't have anything. And it was just such an amazing change to our lives, that all of a sudden Dad was his focus of attention, and on a regular basis photographers were showing up to our house.
And Adam, you mentioned your sister Judy there a minute ago. Like, when you were writing this, when you were going back over memories about your dad and, say, growing up and your family life and things like that, did you and your sister have a lot of kind of chats about it, about different kind of things that you might have she mightn't have remembered or you might have remembered and things like that. I'm just kind of curious from a kind of a family point of view, like did you have a good kind of chat and catch up about, say, some of the things you wanted to kind of bring into the book as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about our relationship with my dad and, and how different it was from my sister than it was from me. I mean, she had some issues with him. There's no doubt about that. But her being the girl in the family and the firstborn, uh, she and my dad were a lot closer than I was. Yet still, she advocated for me a lot when I had trouble with him. Sometimes she would actually tell me not to let it get away with some stuff that he pulled. And, when I was in recovery, it was like, there's nothing else I can do. I mean, we talked a lot about the difficulty and the journey that we went through, both of us, in terms of the ups and downs of the ups being Star Trek in our lives, how it changed our lives for the better, how it opened up opportunities, how we got more comfortable in the Nimoy household. In '68, we moved to Westwood by UCLA in a much bigger house. Our lives had changed so dramatically together. And it was nice to have, had Julie to go through that with. And then things got more complicated and difficult. I mean, I became a pothead, smoking weed all the time. And my dad became an admitted alcoholic. And he and I had a lot more serious conflict. And my sister was around for a lot of that and knew what was going on, and was sympathetic a lot to my situation, my troubles with my dad and difficulties. So it was more a case of, I mean, she does remember more things than I do. It's interesting how she remembers stuff I have no recollection of, and I remember stuff she has no recollection of. It's really fascinating. But I got to just say, I mean, I'm just grateful that I had her to go through the journey with, because it just gives some kind of a reinforcement about things like, yeah, it was special. Yeah, this did happen. Yeah, there were photographers everywhere. Yeah, people started showing up to our house when our address was, publicized. Julie was there, and it's so nice to have someone else to talk about that stuff and process it. And yeah, I had trouble with my dad, and I'm not crazy. It wasn't me. A lot of times she would just say, "It's not you, it's him," and this is why. This is what's going on with him. So, really grateful that I had her to go through the journey with.
One of the things that struck me when I was reading the book is, as you said just a few minutes ago, is that we all know Leonard Nimoy as Mr. Spock, we know him as the actor and things like that. And I'm always reminded of the fact that both my parents are teachers. And when you grow up and you have a teacher in school, you look at them and go, they're a robot. They've got no family, they've got no life and all this. And there's this huge separation in your own head. And then when you have a parent who's a teacher, you're going, yeah, but they've got hopes, dreams, they're not perfect people and things like that. And as I read your book, I was there going, there's an incredible honesty to this, and it's, as you said, it's not salacious. It's just saying he was in the end a man, and as you say in the cover of the book, the most human. It's just he was just a normal man as well, who's subject to not being perfect in any kind of shape or form.
Well, yeah, I
And
mean, I do pull back the curtain a little bit on that, with the public, with his adoring fans. I mean, this is another part of the problem with dealing with my dad. I mean, it's very hard to have conflict with a man who is adored by millions of people all over the world. And then I come along and say, you are human like the rest of us.
mhm.
You're pure human, unlike Spock. You are 100% human, and you make mistakes. And part of my job as your son is to point those out to you. And it was very difficult with him. He was just way too powerful, and he had, and he was famous, and it's very tough taking on somebody like that.
And
You know,
Adam,
the pro-
just
the
in
other,
turn,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry, go on. No, after you, Adam.
Well, the other thing I just want to say is that here's the thing you have to understand is that when I had trouble with my dad, when I would go back out in the world, he would be everywhere. I mean, Spock is ubiquitous,
Yeah.
meaning he's everywhere. He's everywhere. And it's very hard to be confronted with that when I have a personal relationship with him, which is sometimes subject to difficulties. And, I would have these knockdown, drag out fights with him. And then I go out, driving around LA, running errands or going to work. And there'd be pictures of him on the newsstands or on a billboard or, on the radio or someone would connect my last name with him, and I can't even go to the laundromat to pick up my shirts without a conversation about how wonderful Leonard Nimoy is. I mean, and now it's lovely to see all this stuff recording. I mean, I was in Europe recently, and in Barcelona, there was a picture of Spock in a matador's outfit, in a bull ring. I mean, and then I was in the Apennines. I was in Italy somewhere in a remote village, and there were postcards of Spock. I mean, it's just absurd. And even recently, there's this great film by Kenneth Branagh, Belfast. I only saw it for the first time probably about a year ago, and they're watching Star Trek during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. It's like, what? The kids are sitting around watching Star Trek. Well, all this incredible, this just incredible conflict and troubles are happening, in that society. It's just weird to me.
I still haven't seen Belfast, but now I know there's a Star Trek reference inside there, so I'm all on board for it.
You'll be watching that after this, yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Adam, just in terms of then say, obviously, look, in terms of say, there's a balance you have to strike with a book like this as well, in terms of sharing your own personal experiences, both said with your dad, with your family, and being so open about your journey, but also maintaining an element of your own privacy as well. Like, you don't want to completely give away your entire life. How did you find that balance? And I know you said obviously you worked with your editor and things like that, and to kind of, bring out what you need to and pull back what you don't need to kind of put out and all that. But did you find that balance tough to strike?
Not really. No, I mean, it's when I had a plethora of material. I mean, I had plenty of material on all fronts of, the problems with my mother, the problems with Nancy, the problems with my kids, problems with my dad. I mean, we had an embarrassment of riches. We had plenty of stuff to choose from. I knew I didn't want to tell it all anyway. I mean, the kind of like the standard in the industry is really mommy dearest. When Christina Crawford was writing about her mother, Joan Crawford, I mean, that's a pretty complete, view of what happened to her. And this is not that, and that book there's a lot to say about that situation. It's a very honest, a very detailed recounting of a very complicated situation that she was in with her mother. I mean, really tragic on a lot of levels. This is not that, and it was never intended to be that. I don't care to air dirty laundry. There's no point in that. That's just resentment. I'm in recovery. We love everybody, and resentment is a big obstacle to recovery. So I don't want to have that. And this is not revenge in any way, about what happened with my dad. It's not it at all. This is a story that I feel confident that if my dad read it, he'd be okay with it. He might have forgotten some of the things that I put in there, but I think in the end he would be okay with it, because the point is, it's a triumph for the two of us to overcome all these difficulties. That's the emphasis of the book. Yeah. So I don't need to dwell on the dirty laundry. People get the idea right away, I think. And that's where the editor came in. It's like, you have enough here. Let's move on now to what happened and how you guys finally found each other again. And because that's the emphasis of the book. I mean, there's three parts to everything, and a lot of it was, a lot of the early troubles I had with my dad just as a kid growing up, the incredible conflict I had with him, which finally led to our reconnection and our recovery, both for him and, to stop drinking and for me to stop using. And then finally, the whole last third of the book is how my dad, the tragedy I went through, and how my dad and I were very close to each other, to the point where he could be helpful to me when I needed him most as a father. And when you have that laid out in the book, you've got three parts to fill. The first part, there's only so much you can put in there. I mean, I have specific delineations in terms of even page count of how much are you going to tell. Well, it's only a third of the book, and then we're going to move on to other things. So, you have to figure out, prioritize what's important.
So,
sorry, go on, Mike.
I was going to say, so the book is obviously titled "The Most Human: Reconciling with My Father." Where did the title come from?
Well, the title comes from a line in Star Trek II, the Kirk eulogy of Spock, where he said, let me see if I have a copy of the book. I don't want to, I've been paraphrasing it. You guys get the book?
We have the copies right here.
All right, well, take a look. Yeah, it's right there in the very beginning. The preamble of the book is the quote from Kirk. Comes from Kirk's eulogy of Spock.
Does indeed, yep. I don't know why I'm reading it. Like, I know the bloody eulogy off the top of my head. I've watched Wrath of Khan so many times. Adam, one of the things that I said I really appreciate about the book is that as you spoke about your mental health journey, as you spoke about being in recovery and things like that, there was never a stage where it kind of seemed that you ever felt, well, I'm done with recovery. I'm fully recovered. I want to kind of keep on talking. And I really appreciate the fact that you were just open about the fact that you kept on going to these meetings, you kept on dealing with your friend Justin, you kept on speaking to him, you kept on being open and things like that. In the current world that we live in and things like that, how important is it for people to be open about their mental health struggles, about being open, talking about things and getting problems off their chest?
Well, the thing is that, first of all, when you know, if you've been in, look, I smoked pot for 30 years almost daily. So I'm always going to be an addict in recovery as long as I stay in the program. I mean, you're never recovered. That just doesn't exist really. Relapse in terms of using again is always right around the corner for us. And I can't say today that I will never use, you know, or drink again. I would never say that, but today I'm pretty sure I won't be using or drinking, and it's a one day at a time kind of a situation. So I stay in the program because, and I want to be in recovery. I want to continue to learn how best to live my life on planet Earth. That's really that simple to me, and that's why I stay very close to my friends in recovery, and I go to meetings still, generally, and I sit on the board of directors of a residential addiction treatment center because I want to be helpful and of service to those people. You know, the thing is that what's important to understand is that you do not need to be an addict or an alcoholic to be in recovery. Recovery is simply tools to use to help us deal with life on life's terms, we say, the challenges of life. I mean, they're very simple things to just help people become more emotionally mature and try to improve the way that they interact with people and how they deal with conflict. I mean, it's really pretty simple. And you don't need to be an addict to be in recovery. Everybody's recovering from something, whether it's a failed marriage or you know, career mishaps or dysfunctional relationship in the family, you know, or some tragic event in the family. Everybody's recovering from something. I think it's, you know, and recovery demands honesty, really. I mean, that's what it's all about. You have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with your peers. That is the first step of recovery. And the very first step is to admit that we're powerless over alcohol or drugs and our lives have become unmanageable. I mean, if you can't admit that, then then maybe you're not ready for recovery.
Yeah.
People have to be ready to go in, and we can't make people do it. So,
The first step to recovery, isn't it, is understanding that you've got a problem.
Exactly. Admitting
Yeah.
Yes, admitting you have a problem. So, yes, honesty is always important, and you know, the tool, the program of recovery is something that I ascribe to. It's not, you know, I don't do it perfectly. I don't do it every day, but I do it on a regular basis because I enjoy the fellowship. I enjoy the community, the recovery community, and we share our experience, strength, and hope. All the stuff that we're going through. What, you know, we share about what it was like when we were out there using, what happened to us to make us hit bottom and make us want to change, and what our life is like now in recovery. And you get people from all spectrums on that. We get a lot of newcomers who are a great reminder to us of why we did it in the first place, because their life is a mess. That's why they came into the program. They can't handle life. They can't deal with it. Their life is unmanageable. And out of desperation, they come in. And we like it that they're desperate, because you need desperation to come in and ask for help. So, you know, I love the program. It's not for everybody. I don't practice it perfectly. There's a lot of stuff I hear that I just pay no attention to. There are a lot of people who talk that I don't really don't resonate with me. But there are a lot of things that we have in common, and those are the things I focus on.
It's interesting, when I was reading the book, there was always something that I always ascribed to in terms of, say, accepting certain things in your life that you can't change and things like that. And then I came across the Serenity Prayer in the book, and I was reading it up in my fiance's house. And the second I started reading it, I was there, wait a second. I said, that's actually on the wall in this house here. And I ran out into the hallway, and there is the Serenity Prayer up on the wall that leads into the kitchen. And I said, I did not know that this was part of, say, the program that you were in. I never realized its actual importance to it. How important is, say, the idea of the Serenity Prayer in terms of accepting those things that you cannot change in, say, the context of recovery, Adam?
Well, in 90% of the meetings that I go to, we end it with the Serenity Prayer. And as I say in the book, The serenity prayer is pretty simple. I mean, the prayer goes, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, i.e., other people or things, the courage to change the things I can, that is me, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I heard a woman share in recovery in a meeting very recently. She said, the prayer boils down to this: God, teach me how to accept them and change me, please. Accept them, change me. I can't do anything about them. They are who they are. And that's the story of the most human, with my mother and my father. They're exactly who they're supposed to be. And there's nothing I'm going to do to change them. That was the whole story of my relationship with Martha, my second wife, because she came from a very conservative family. And it's like, and I asked my friend Justin, shouldn't I educate her about, people like Dick Cheney, former vice president under George W. Bush, and the stuff that went down? She doesn't seem to be aware of this stuff. And he's like, no, that's not your job. No, don't change her. Don't educate her. Don't fix her. Don't reform her. Don't show her. No, that is not your job.
I actually loved that part of the book because I was like you, Adam. When I was reading that, I was there going, if I was in Adam's position, what would I be trying to do? So when you spoke to Justin about it and he gave you that bit of advice, it hit me like a brick as well, because I was like, oh my God, he's actually completely right in that situation. And Justin was so good in terms of the advice that he would give you, because you would come across a problem in the book and I'd be reading it going, how is Adam going to solve this one? And then you'd speak to Justin, and Justin would give you this one-liner or this one little bit of advice. You're going, oh my God, how did he know to solve that so well?
Yeah, I mean, I hit him at a very good time in his life when he was just really, he was really in the program, and he was just like my little Buddha. He was so wise, and he would even admit he couldn't follow his own wisdom. He would say about my mother, your mother's exactly who she's supposed to be, and your job is to be of service to her. And I was like, yeah. Dude, you talk shit about your mom all the time. And he'd say, you're right. When I do that, I'm not working the program. That's true.
But I think we all suffer that at some point, don't we? Like when somebody asks us for advice, yes, we'll give it and we won't necessarily follow it ourselves, kind of thing. Like,
yes, sometimes it's easier to see more clearly what's going on with somebody else than what's happening in your own life. And Justin is, I think, the epitome of that. Is that he, he really sang as a sweet bird of wisdom for me when I met him. He just gave me so much stuff. He so loved me. I loved him. We were so close, and he felt so honored because he was a Trek fan, and just honored that I would be his best friend in recovery. That he gave me the best that he had to offer, and he had a lot of wisdom to offer. I learned a lot from him. I learned an awful lot from him. I was really lucky to find him.
I love the fact that, as I said, going through the book and things like that, like it actually felt like I was part of your family by the end of it, because I was trying to constantly jump one step ahead and say, what's the next thing that's going to happen in Adam's life? Although in fairness, most of the time, I could never predict what was going to happen because every page was completely different what was going to happen next. Adam, when you were writing the book, what was your favorite part of the creative process?
Editing. Editorial. That's the best part. That's the same with filmmaking. It's like getting all the stuff, getting out there, getting on a first draft out there. It's going to be rough. It's going to be ugly, but you just got to get it all out, stream of consciousness, and get all the material on the page. Get it on the page. It doesn't work when it's just stuck in your head. And us writers and addicts, we have stuff going on in our heads all the time. We've got the brain is just going full throttle. That's a big part of my recovery, is getting control of my brain. In fact, when I'm pissed off at somebody like my son Jonah, when he wants to quit school or whatever, I have to get a grip on my brain. But editorial process is the most interesting, the most fun. It was great having feedback from a independent editor who could have a much more like zoom out, look at the big picture. She could help me get in touch with the big picture. It's the same true as editorial when I was making TV shows. It's like, oh, here's a great moment. We should do this. We should do that. We should echo. And I would say things to my editor, and I'd say, you know what, we should do this here because it picks up on something that we do earlier. And she's like, perfect, you're right, because we want motif. We want the reader to see that we're doing things for a reason. We're planning stuff that's going to show up later on. There's going to be an echo. It's a part of it's style, it's, it's technique. And I love that about writing. I love that about filmmaking.
And when you were talking then in the book as well, you mentioned about the fact that you were directing on set and things like that, and you felt you came across a certain way. But then when you kind of looked at it from a different angle, you were there going, maybe I was a bit angry when I was on set. Maybe people didn't think I was an approachable individual and things like that. How did that kind of revelation kind of sit with you then when you kind of realized maybe I didn't really understand how people perceived me?
Well, yeah, I mean, I made a lot of mistakes on set. I mean, it was, I talked about the fact that I didn't smoke weed when I was like directing TV. But, when you stop smoking weed, you're in withdrawal for at least 90 days. And when you're in withdrawal, you're restless, irritable, and discontent, essentially, we like to say in the program. So, and the hours are long. So when I would get there at 6 in the morning already, I'm in a bad mood. So yeah, I mean, I made a lot of mistakes. I mean, the fact of the matter is I just have to accept that about myself and move on, and try not to make the same mistakes over again. I still do. I'll say stupid stuff occasionally. It's like, why did I say that? Or maybe I came off too gruff with this person, and I mean, I had something happen in a bookstore in New York, with somebody where I thought, oh my God, am I getting into a fight here with this guy? I gotta back down here. I think I'm coming on too strong. I still do that. I mean, that's my personality. I'm not that far from my dad. My dad can come on very strong, and I have to watch myself. So it's good to have to look at things in retrospect and take our own inventory, as we say in the program, of our character defects and just be aware of them, but be willing to forgive ourselves in the morning. And that's just a good practice, is to be able to move on and grow from it and not beat yourself up about it, because people do that all the time. I used to do that all the time. Alcoholics and addicts do all the time. My mother used to say to me, no matter how hard your father is on you, he's hardest on himself. And I believe that is 100% true.
And in terms of, say, the writing process, in terms of time, Adam, how long did it take you from start to finish, do you recall, from when you started writing the book to when you actually said, that's it, book is done?
Well, I actually started writing this book when I first met Martha, because a lot of those episodes are with her. And that all happened in 08. That's when I started writing the book, 08.
Oh.
Word.
Yeah, I mean, some of those stories were written some of those stories about meeting Martha were written in 08. That's when I met her. And my reconciliation with my dad.
Because I was wondering, a lot of the times in the book, you have like actual dialogue from certain stories. And I remember reading it going, how the hell does he remember exactly what was said in these situations? And now I understand, because you were writing it at the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is an issue with most memoirs. I mean, one of my favorite, really the Bible of memoir for me is Angela's Ashes, Frank McCourt. And in it, he recounts detailed conversations, as a 6-year-old, so it's like, it's a little absurd. Or maybe he kept journals back then and he was referring to them. I don't know. I mean, the point is that it services the theme and objectives in his book. And a lot of that, a lot of the stuff, the dialogue that was in there was stuff that I journaled, and stories that I had written that I had just been carrying around for years, that I thought I got to include this stuff now, because I'm writing about the death of my dad was 9 years ago. And I'm writing about not only the death of my dad, but also, my life with my kids now, which is much more current. I mean, the very last chapter of the book happened just 2 years ago, Book of Jonah, when I was reading from Book of Jonah. So, and my conversations with Jonah while he was on tour with the Offspring. So, it's been a long time in coming. I think in earnest, it really took about 2 or 3 years to pull the material together and decide what the book was. That's how long I was working with my editor, Brenda. And she, I think we were together for about 2 to almost 3 years, but it started to really coalesce when we did the pitch, and we got a publisher interested, willing to publish the book. Then I went to New York in March of last year, and that's when we started really pulling the material together and into book form and into finishing the book. So that last year was a lot of intense writing and rewriting.
And it's funny you mentioned Angela's Ashes because, of course, that is set in my hometown of Limerick City as well. And the one absolutely accurate thing that he has is that it always rains in Limerick. So he was absolutely not wrong on that because it's a terribly rainy city. Adam, in
Wait, I
terms of
just
the
have to say, but the thing about that was so interesting is that, show it's, I've forgotten that was where you were from. And the one of the funniest things in the book was he talked about it rained so much that there would be things growing in your clothes. It would like mold and spores and things that would just be, on your, outerwear, growing in a jacket. That's how much it rained. It's just a fabulous, fabulous book.
And for a very kind of tough book, you would never believe, but they made a musical of that book that I went to see a couple of years ago. And I was there going, how are they going to change this book into a musical? I have no idea. But they did it. They found a way to do it. Adam, just in terms of the book then, in what way do you hope this will kind of, say, be of use to people who are going through their own, say, either recovery journey or mental health journey and all that? Because there's a huge element to that. And do you hope that when people read it, that it's not just them reading about your relationship with your dad, with your family and things like that, but also but how being open, being honest, going to meeting, talking to people, how it will help them. Because that was one of the big
Yeah.
takeaways for me from it was being open, consistently staying open, and always knowing that the recovery journey never really ends, but that's not a bad thing either.
Yeah, I mean, again, I share. I'm often asked to speak at meetings. 12-step meetings are usually an hour. Sometimes they're 90 minutes, and then there's speaker meetings. We have somebody who's sharing for 15 or 20 minutes, and then it opens up the meeting for discussion, and then other people get to share for 2 minutes. And the thing I share about almost all the time is this situation with my dad, how we were able to reconcile with one another. And I share about it anonymously. I don't talk about the fact that my dad's Leonard Nimoy or a famous person. I just say he's very successful in his field and and a self-made man from the Depression era and became very difficult to deal with. Yet we were able to use the tools of recovery to reconcile with one another. Well, after the meetings, people come up to me all the time and tell me that they're inspired to reconcile with a family member, whether it's a parent or a sibling, somebody in the family that they've had trouble with. So my feeling is that I'm trying to be of service. This is a big part of recovery. One of the actions of recovery is trying to be helpful to other people who are in the process of recovery. And this is my way of just contributing to the dialogue of showing people that it can be done. We have using these tools of recovery can be very helpful in dealing with problematic relationships from which there's no answer. I had no idea what to do with my dad. None. I always thought I would get through to him, or I could stand up to him, or I could take him on, or I could show him all the things that Justin told me you cannot do. I could rehabilitate him. I could explain to him. I could enlighten him. No, no, no. That's where I was wrong. I was wrong. I didn't know what to do at that point. All I knew was from Al-Anon was to disengage until my friend said, "This is what you're going to do. You're going to go make an amends to your dad.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you do it." I'm like, I'm not doing that. He never made an amends to me. I'm not doing it to him. Apologize to him after all the stuff he's pulled? No way. And they explained to me, it's not for him. The amends is not for him. It's for you.
Yeah.
It's for you to let go of your resentment towards your dad. You can be right. You're right about your dad. I mean, you know what happened with him. He did do some things that were not appropriate as a parent, not helpful, not loving, not kind as a parent. You're right about that, but you have a choice. You can be right or you can be happy. But if you want to be happy, go make the amends to your dad. Don't expect an amends in return, and let go of all the resentment you've been carrying around all your life. His was the most important relationship, as I said, in my entire life. And my friend said, this is your chance to finally do something with your life and move on, finally. And that's what I share. And people it seems to resonate with people. That's the point of the book. It's not just, this is the story of Leonard Nimoy. This is a father and son story. Your parent doesn't have to be famous for you to relate to this. People relate to this on a lot of different levels, and it has nothing to do with Leonard Nimoy.
And Adam, how does it feel then? So obviously we spoke about your friend Justin. You spoke about how kind of, always he could just get the bit of advice and give it to you that was always seemed to be perfectly spot on and all that. But now you are in a position where, as you said, people are coming up to you. They're saying they're inspired by you. How does it feel for you to say, I've actually helped someone today? Maybe it'll help them for one day. Maybe it'll help them toward the rest of their life and things like that, because you are making a difference to people's lives. How does that feel for you?
Well, it's very satisfying. I mean, I want to be helpful to these people. I mean, we've got over 100 residents at this residential addiction treatment center. These people are fighting for their lives. We have fentanyl all over the place, all over this country. People are dying. It's a fight for their lives. And I want to be helpful to them. It's a part of my recovery. It feels really great. I love doing it. I mean, I just the past couple of weeks, I have the woman I work with in meditation, my meditation instructor. I got her over there at the recovery center working with the residents, and she's become a total rock star over there. They love her because they need that. And then my yoga instructor, I was just with her yesterday. I go to yoga on Sundays. I've been with her for a year now. I mean, I've been practicing yoga since 1980 when I went to law school. I started practicing yoga. They need it over there. And now she's going over there teaching. She's there now at this moment teaching yoga to the residents over at the recovery. It's called Beit Teshuvah, House of Return. It's a Jewish congregation, but it's also a residential addiction treatment center for everybody of any faith. And I'm trying to be helpful to these people. I just want to be, being of service. That's what it's all about. It's just helping other people. And that feels really great. It's very satisfying to the extent that I could do so. That is what recovery is about. Recovery is simply staying sober and helping another alcoholic achieve sobriety. That is how Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob founded AA. They got together and talked about their problem, and somehow that alleviated the obsession with needing to go get a drink. That's how it started, pure and simple. So I'm just trying to practice the basic foundation of the program. Stay sober and help another alcoholic achieve sobriety. That's it.
Like when we were going through your career in the book as well, Adam, obviously you were a lawyer, you worked as a director, you worked in the entertainment industry, you became an educator as well and things like that. And now what you're doing is you're helping so many people. Did you ever envisage this is the way your life path would kind of take you?
No, I mean, I never thought I'd be in recovery this long, for sure. I mean, I thought, as I say in the book, I thought I just smoked pot. That was my drug of choice. I was never like an opiate guy.
Yeah.
I was never, I'm not even an alcoholic. I identify as one because I love the program. And Justin's the guy who said, I believe you're not an alcoholic. You really don't have the personality traits that alcoholics have. This is Justin talking, whatever those traits are. But he said, having said that, you should have absolutely no problem not taking a drink. Yeah. And he was right. I just didn't care. I could take it or leave it. And he said, okay, then just leave it. And I did. So, yeah, it's like, I don't know. I'm just so lucky I had him, giving me the guidance that he gave me. I met him right at the right time. There are no accidents in recovery. I say in the book, Justin showed up in a writing class that I was in, and he immediately annoyed me because he was younger than me, he was good looking, and he was funny as hell and a better writer. Just so annoying. I just hated him. And this class was mine. I was there long before he showed up. And it's like 3 guys and 15 women, and I wanted their feedback, and I wanted to be one of the darling, guys in the class. And then he shows up and they're all hysterical about his stuff. So annoying. And then of course he asked me to a meeting.
It's one of those things, as I went through the book, I was there going, I think I found Adam's next book, which is going to be The Teachings of Justin, because it was just always the right bit of advice at the right time. And it was always just distilled into like one sentence. And I always loved your dialogue streams that you'd have in it. You'd come at the problem and I'd be there going, yeah, Adam, I'm 100% on board with you. I fully agree with you. And then Justin would say something, and I'd be fighting against it almost in real time, saying, what's Adam going to say back next? Because it's probably what I'm going to say back as well in that kind of situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky I had him just as a literary device. I would have had to invent him if I didn't actually meet him. You know what I mean? You need a foil like that. I mean, I need somebody like that, where you have a dynamic relation with the best friend somewhere. You need an antagonist. You need a good ally. You need a good love interest. You know, it's all there in The Most Human.
And every time you tried to kind of argue with him from a point of view of, no, I'm doing this thing, and he'd always be able to find a way to kind of say, no, Adam, you're totally wrong, and this is what
Yeah.
you need to do. There was one particular story I found not awkward, but I was there going like, this is a huge story, and I found it like you were kind of alluding to it there. Was the letter that Jeepers, I don't know why for some reason I'm drawing a blank on it exactly. The letter you sent your dad, or was it your dad sent you one back as well? And you were talking to Justin about trying to make the amends because you didn't know what to do with it. You didn't know how to kind of take it on, and having to call over to your dad and let him kind of go through it and say, look, here are the things that have gone wrong and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of the pivotal point in the book is my dad sent me the letter. It was a long letter of his resentment towards me, his list of my character defects, all the times that he tried to help me with my career and that I had screwed it up, and the mistakes I had made, and the reasons why I'm the problem in the relationship with him. It's a pretty devastating letter. And and then initially my reaction was just to let it go and let him have his say and hope that we would someday have a good relationship. But it was my friend Chris who said, no, you should take the letter and go make an amends to him for everything in it. This is going to be great. This is going to change your relationship. And that I resisted. And then I called Justin and told him. And Justin said to me, he said, wait a minute, you're going to go to your dad and list all of your resentments towards him? I totally disagree with that. No. Chris said I should go to my dad and make amends for all of my dad's resentments towards me. And Justin went, oh, interesting. I totally agree with that.
Adam, just out of curiosity, if you don't mind me asking, do you still have that letter?
I do. It's buried somewhere. I have trouble looking at it.
I can understand why you'd have trouble looking at it, all right. That seemed to be that was like, even I was extremely awkward reading that because I was there going, I don't know how any human being would be able to do what Adam's about to do here and sit there for any of us to have somebody kind of say, here are the issues that I have with you and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm the only one who's got one of those letters, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky. I'm grateful I got it. There's no accidents in recovery. The letter gave me the opportunity to make an amends to my dad, and I'm really grateful I had that opportunity because otherwise, he may have died with us being, pretty much estranged from one another.
Yeah.
I really appreciated the fact that I could be close to my dad because he was a fun guy to be with. I had a lot in common with him. We had a lot of things happen. Some things I couldn't include in the book where we were of one mind in trying to repair our family.
Mm-hmm.
We just really, it's just great having an ally like somebody like that. I mean, he really was a great guy, but there were some issues as fathers and sons that we simply could not address. And we didn't look back and we didn't, occasionally I say in the book, he was steering back to some of that garbage that we had with one another. And I would try to steer him away from it because I just didn't really want to go in with him. Or I would just simply, he would bring up stuff and I would just say, I don't know what I was thinking. And I just apologize. I'm so sorry that happened. Instead of saying, yeah, but you did da 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 da. I never say that to him. Yeah, but do you remember the time when you said blah blah blah, or you did this, or you did that? It's just a waste of time with him because he'd just go on the defensive. We'd be right back to knocking heads with one another, and that's just useless.
Yeah, it's not productive to do that, is it?
No.
And it's never going to make any kind of difference to it. One of the things that I often found, I suppose, funny in the book is your relationship with Maddie and how Maddie would often think that you were a bit of a, look for want of a better term, a bit of a square and things like that, especially anything to do with, say, with Martha and things like that. I found those parts of the book very kind of humorous. And I liked how your relationship with her kind of changes throughout the book and things like that. And especially, I really liked with Jonah as well, as you said, Jonah's decisions, his life choices, where he wanted to go and things like that. How, if you don't mind me asking, of course, Adam, how is your relationship with them now?
Well, it's good. I mean, we still have issues all the time, and we get through them. I just banged heads with Jonah a couple of weeks ago about something, because he's such a rock star now. But he was good. I mean, we got through it. We have a lot of love connection that we had since the very beginning, very different from my dad. So, we worked through stuff and we're able to see, appreciate each other's perspectives and respect each other's positions. and know that we do really love and care about each other, and we're connected to each other. They're complicated kids. I still call them kids. Jonah's 32, Maddie's 34. I'm really proud of what they've accomplished, and I talk to them regularly about their stuff. Jonah's traveling the world with the Offspring. He's been doing that for 7 years now.
Yep.
A little punk band out of Orange County, California. I like to say a little small, obscure punk. I say this to American audiences. I say he's got Jonah now plays with a little obscure punk band out of Orange County, California called the Offspring, and people just go, what? And my daughter Maddie, interestingly enough, she's vice president of production at Paramount Television Studios.
Yep.
She works for Paramount that made all things Star Trek. I mean, there was a while there where Maddie had an office very close to where my dad's office was when he was on Mission Impossible. So
full circle.
I was going to say it's a full circle moment. Yeah,
very much so. So they're doing well, and I have an older daughter who lives in Boston, Morgan, and I just love her and have a good relationship with her. And then I have my stepson through my late wife Martha. He's still with me, and and I just have a good relationship with him. I let them make their own mistakes. I'm there if they need me. I don't give them that much advice. I do occasionally, like with Maddie, I do. I mean, we're very much of one mind, my daughter Maddie and I, and it's important to have good relationships with those kids. It's just really important to me.
Yeah.
I definitely think a lot of anything in the book that involved Maddie, I was always really interested in it just because of the dynamic between the two of you. Adam, thank you so much for everything you've written in the book. Thank you for your honesty and how kind of upfront you were about everything. I've one last question for you, Adam, if that is okay.
Sure.
In terms of the book and everything, what has the entire experience meant to you?
Well, it just reinforces, my road of recovery. I feel good about being, sticking with it this long. I'm very proud of what I've achieved over 20 years of sobriety. It's a big number, and it's a lot. Again, I was in it a lot longer than I thought I would be. Also, it's just as a writer, as an artist myself, it's a great achievement to have focused and finished something. It's just so critical just to complete the project and get it out there. And it emboldens me to do more. I mean, I'm hoping that I find an audience who wants to read my material, because there is more to come. I don't know if it'll be the sayings of Justin. He may play a role in my next book. I do have something else that's, in the wings. But I've always wanted to be a writer. I've been keeping journals all my life, and this is some validation that people are responding to the book. It is resonating with people. There's interest in the book. There is some craft, I hope, in the book, and with the help of Brenda, my editor. I mean, when I approached her, I just asked that she please make me a better writer. That's all I asked for, and I think I am. She worked very hard to break me of a lot of bad habits that I had. So I'm hoping that I can continue on this path because I think it's really challenging. I think I have more to say, and I really enjoy the process. And I'm really grateful that I found Chicago Review Press to pick it up and see the merit of the project, and it seems to be still generating interest everywhere, and I'm really grateful for that.
And when you're doing, because I saw Nicholas Meyer was at one of your book readings and things like that, and when you're doing the book readings and things like that, how do you feel people are kind of reacting to the book?
Well, Nick Meyer, interestingly enough, he's like my long lost uncle. I mean, now I just call Nick all the time. I love Nick. Nick was at that reading, and he told me that he was about to go on a book tour with his new book. He just wrote another installment in the Sherlock Holmes saga. Yeah. And he's about to go on a tour, and he said there were a lot of things that I did in my presentation that he wants to use in his presentation. Which I thought was like flattering, and he enjoyed reading my book. So, when Nick gives me the 2 thumbs up, I feel like I'm on the right track. It's really helpful to me because, Nick he's really a model that I'm kind of trying to emulate. The guy has generated a lot of stuff. A lot of written work. He's really, really prolific. And even at this stage of the game, Frank McCourt was in his 50s when they published Angela's Ashes. it's never too late. That's another thing that, people should know. It's never too late. I'm going to be 68 in a couple of months, and I'm still have more to do, and I still have aspirations. And, I really feel like I'm on the right track when Nick says, yeah, I'm going to be doing what you just did, with that presentation, because I've got a show that I take on the road, and I need feedback. And Nick's like, yeah, you're doing it right. I'm going to be doing some of that. I just love that about him.
And Nick Meyer definitely strikes me as a man who is not easily impressed either in those
No,
kind
he's
of
not.
situations.
And he doesn't suffer fools lightly either, as he would say. Nick's a very interesting guy. And like I say, I feel like, he and I just kind of like reconnected over the past couple of years. And now it's like, I won't let him go. It's like, Nick, I'm calling him to take him to lunch, and, because he's just one of these guys that I just admire so much. And he just loves it. I mean, he acts like he's so happy, that he's like family to me, and it's just really important to me to honor the people like Nick, and to emulate him, and to ask his opinion about stuff, and to ask his opinion, ask his opinion about my stuff, and am I on the right track, and what do I do here? And, it's really, really great to have an ally like him.
And do you think then, Adam, if you do another book, do you think it'll be another, will it be like a book about your life? Will it be a fiction book? Will it be kind of a self-help book or something like that? What are you thinking you'd like to do? If you don't mind me asking, of course, I was spoiling the future and your kind of future literary career.
Because I'm not sure the answer. I mean, I have a lot of stories about a particular theme I'm working on. The issue is whether or not it should be novelized. I don't know. That's something I'm going to be talking with my editor about more. I'm not sure. It's in memoir form at the moment, and it may stay that way. I may just, continue on in Frank McCourt's, footsteps, and just continue on with Tis and Teacher Man, and all of his addendums to Angela's Ashes. I may go that route. I'm not sure yet. It's to be discovered.
Brilliant stuff, Mike. Do you have any other questions for Adam?
Nope, not.
I'll let you do the wrap up then, Mike.
So, Adam, thank you so much for joining us this week. This has been an incredible experience for me, and I think I can say the same for you, Show. For everybody watching and listening at home, remember you can catch up with more Clonestar podcast at our website, clonestarpod.com. But until next time, live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.